Joining me in this episode is Vince Freeman, Chief AI Implementation Officer at HardingPorman. He has spent over 30 years at the intersection of technology, creativity, and storytelling, helping brands navigate change and thrive in a rapidly evolving marketplace. Today, he's here to talk with us about AI, what's happening now, what's coming next, and how we can all prepare to not just survive, but thrive in the age of artificial intelligence. Here we go. You're listening to Working Forward, a future of work focused podcast from People Forward Network. These episodes pave the road ahead, helping us confidently step into the future as a leader who moves people forward. After all, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Let's go. Vince Freeman, what's up, dude?
Jason Cochran, very good to see you, man. Thanks.
You too, man. Man, you've been up to a lot here lately. In fact, you have by far the coolest role and title of being a Chief AI Officer at HardingPorman. Let's start there. Chief AI Officer. I have a feeling we're going to start to see more people in that role leading in organizations. Tell us what you've been up to and what led to that awesome new role that you're helping to lead at HardingPorman.
Absolutely. I'm going to correct you a little bit. There's a word in it. So it's Chief AI Implementation Officer.
Oh, thank you for that correction.
And I think it's an important distinction because if somebody's not strategically implementing AI within an organization, it doesn't tend to happen organically. So it's a very intentional position. And I think it's funny. It's all the things that I've ever posted or have been posted about me on LinkedIn, and I'm old. There's been a lot of them. That by far got the most attention, and from people liking, commenting to just like I really believe within a 48-hour period, I had 70 to 80 direct DMs wanting to know more and what that meant. But I think as unique as that is, the novelty of it, it will be commonplace by the end of the year. I think it's a very common position that's going to happen.
That soon, huh?
I really do. I'm sure we'll get into it later, but I don't think anybody has. I think the masses do not have a clear understanding of the exponential speed of the development of AI that we are embarking on right now.
I know it's hard just for I traded to stay plugged into this stuff just like you do, Vince, and it's even a challenge for me keeping up with it each day. It's like I can't believe how fast things are progressing. Take us a little bit more into your role specifically, because I do think a lot of the listeners will find that fascinating. What does a typical day look like as a Chief AI Implementation Officer?
Well, right now it's a lot of research. And a comfortability or a comfort level with tools and using AI, and then kind of almost an intimate understanding of the operation of the organization. Of course, everything's going to then start with education, but what is the low-hanging fruit? How do you what systems can you put in place that might add value in either customer experience, efficiencies, or certainly automations? I think a lot of people tend to want to get a lot of bang for the buck, so they'll start, thinking, well, we got to use AI to automate things or things like that. But for example, we're going to have a workshop next week for the sales team on just how to use and build a custom GBT to assist them in their communications and LinkedIn posting, stuff like that. The next level of that might be how to build a client-specific strategy GBT so that you can then add more value to your clients. We've got on the list, certainly another piece of low-hanging fruit is SOPs. You program a GBT and you tell it that its role is quality assurance, and you load it with all the SOPs and you look for efficiencies, and you can even film an operation and ask, is there room for improvement? So things like that. So right now I'm working with HR to identify the education strategy and what departments that goes to, and then I'll work with the managers on those departments of what the low hanging fruit is in those areas.
I'm about to say, you got to be everybody's best friend there, because I know HR leaders are kind of struggling with this topic of how to go about AI implementation and adoption. IT, they kind of come at it from the technical side, but not like the whole human aspect of integrating it within the culture and how it works well with the human employees. And then you got managers that you're trying to train on it well too, of how to use it with their teams. So it sounds like in your role, you really are Superman, the hero that's coming in to collaborate and support with all of them really well. That's got to be a great feeling for them, because I hear a lot of anxiety from HR leaders a lot of times
Well,
around those events.
I don't know if anybody gets categorized as Superman until they've saved the building from toppling over, or the carload of kids from going off the bridge, right?
That's next.
So yeah, so none of those things have happened. Where I have been fortunate enough in my situation is that HardingPorman, one, is always been very education focused, both internally and externally. So my previous title there was Chief Marketing Officer. And so as part of that role, we did a series of things we called brand muffins. We did them every 90 days, and we would bring in clients, and I would educate them about some aspect of digital marketing or funnel or direct mail or personalization in marketing and things like that. And we do those externally and internally as well. So I've been operating those for a couple of years. What is it now? 2.5 years when ChatGPT burst on the scene. I'm wise enough, which just means I'm old, that I saw this type of disruption happen before. And I just knew that this was going to be 100 times bigger than anything I had ever seen in all those disruptions. And so I started investing in it and spending a lot of time. And then I started to implement it in my creative department with my creative director. And we started building a process to build custom GPTs for each of our clients, and started to refer to it as the third creative in the room, and bouncing ideas and using it to just save time, to A/B test things and things like that. And then as we started seeing traction, then I made the suggestion that we do a brand muffins on, called an AI quick start. And I won't say they went viral, but the demand for those really increased. And I started doing a lot of them. And we do a version where mini muffins, where we would even I would customize it for a specific industry or that. And then they gave me the freedom to just, hey, you just run with that. We trust you, do whatever you want outside of here as well. So I started doing those on a larger scale for companies and online for some pretty big name companies, and so I think they saw all that, and so when we sat down, and again, I just to be really transparent, I'm 64 years old. I'm at a wonderful place in my career where I don't have to prove anything. I don't need to do anything. I don't need any validation. I could retire, honestly, if I wanted to. I certainly don't want to. And so with that, I had a really great open relationship with the leadership there, that I just said, look, there's a lot of things that I have my hand on right now. I will make an agreement with you. I will help automate all those things, train up people so that all those departments that I'm involved in right now can run independently without me. Let me do this AI thing, and I'll make it a win for this organization as I try to figure out what's next. And they said, done. So that's kind of the backstory that led to it. But I'm in a very unique situation with a very forward-thinking leadership. I don't want that to get swept under the rug in any way. They understand the value and see the value of it, which for a commercial printing brand communication company, I mean, they're taking a step that a lot of big companies don't have the moxie to do right now.
Yeah, I recently saw something, Vince, that said it's somewhere like around 96% of CEOs see the hope and promise of artificial intelligence. But so far, it's around 75% of people are saying it's actually creating more work for them. We're just kind of at that stage, with implementation. but that they've got to be excited at HardingPorman that they've got you as a leader saying, yeah, we're going to figure this out. We're going to start doing stuff with it. We're going to start creating GPTs within certain departments and train our people on how to do that and how to interact with it. Because I think a lot of leaders are scared about it. So having someone like you, a leader, saying, I'll help lead this. I'll help train our team on it. We'll figure it out. That's got to give them peace of mind.
I think so. I think there's three things at play there. I think one, I appreciate this. I think some of it's just a level of trust with me. And I'm not saying that to patronize myself, but I'm fortunate enough to be in that situation. And I think they've realized that I see and know enough breaking stuff. And from my role as their CMO and the stuff I brought and changed, bringing technology into, how we communicate with our clients and all that. I think there was a level of trust with that was good. I think the other thing that the hard thing that I understand with CEOs and leaders is this is rapidly approaching that white noise type thing like we've seen before, like the cloud or digital transformation, and you got more prophets with a PH than prophets with an F, coming out of the woodwork. And so it's like, yeah, whatever. We don't know what to believe. The other thing that I would add that I saw is I started customizing these AI quick start, or AI, I call them AI catch-ups, and customizing them for different corporations. I realized I sensed this sense of uncertainty that was like a quandary. It's like the leadership that asked me in, and they would ask me into, it was always at a stakeholder level. Like, will you come in and give this to our stakeholders? And, I've done so many of these, and no matter, I tell you, no matter what level people think their understanding of AI is at the beginning of it, their minds are blown at the end of it. And so then you see that happen to leadership within an organization, and there's this kind of, we're on podcasts, so I can say this, there's this oh shit moment, right? It's this, all right, well, what do we do? And I think it's that understanding, and this is kind of given the way the thought behind my cohort name, which is Surviving the Uprising. People that join it or work with me in a while realize the uprising is not AI. That's the rub. The uprising is your competitor you don't see that is leveraging AI to do things you can't do, and that creates a really unique dilemma for companies. Then how do you transition and start this path where you're empowering your team to use AI with the full understanding they may well automate themselves out of job at some point, and that's okay. So I think that I really appreciate the position that leadership is in right now when it comes to the mindset of AI.
You just touched on, I think, what the really big Pandora's box is with this that gives a lot of people uneasiness is I'm hearing a lot of people say, I'm just talking as a listener right now, right? You're telling me go use AI, but I feel like the more that I use AI, the more I'm getting it to basically replace me in my job, kind of thing. Are you getting any of that where you're at currently, where folks are concerned or they're bringing up concerns of like, hey, I get why we're doing this. I get why it's important, but I still have these worries that like, hey, it's going to put me out of a job. Am I being upskilled for something different, kind of thing? Are you hearing or seeing any of that kind of stuff going on?
I'm feeling it. I do sense it. I think the first one where I really had like, hey, I might have to soften the end of this presentation. My presentations it's in 3 acts. So I do act 1 is just kind of the history of LLMs and how fast they're progressing, and just really so that people understand what's happening with AI and how it does, how quick it's moving and how powerful it is. And then the second act is we look at all types of generative AI. So they start seeing and putting the connection of these, I call them like disparate technology fires that are going to all combine at some time to create this mass firestorm of capability, right? In a multimodal way. And then the last is, okay, I follow a lot of people and they all have different predictions of what the next 5 years are going to look like. So I take the mean of those predictions and I kind of say, all right, here's what 25, 26, 27, 28 is going to look like. And this is how it's going to impact. And I started customizing, this is how it might impact your industry, right? And I hadn't really toned those down yet. It was always, I always came out thinking, well, this is a shock moment, right? And I did one for a manufacturing company. And it was kind of exactly what you were saying. It was like, I could just see, I've done enough presentations in my career to be able to read the room. And you can see where like, oh, there's some real sphincter clenching going on in this room and people don't know what to say. And I might have, I don't think that leadership invited me to their corporate planning retreat to make all the employees go, hey, I'm going to look for another job. But yeah, I do think there is a bit of that. But I have some thoughts about that too. I won't directly go there right now.
But that's the cool thing about this, Vince. We got 2 hours, right? Working Forward listeners love this. They love the video first long form podcast that we do now. So we're booked for 2 hours. So we are going to go there eventually.
Good.
We're gonna.
Well, you'll have, if you'd ask my wife, you have to cut me off at 2 hours. And then I want to thank you for this opportunity as well, because my wife has listened to me talk about AI for a couple of years now, where she is having nightmares about the robot uprising. And so I'm not allowed to speak aloud about AI in the house anymore. So thanks for this moment.
Hey, the same. My wife, Rachel, she doesn't want to hear anything about it. So this is kind of like their creative outlet where we get to do those things with our listeners. It's a safe community. But we are going to get there, and go down in a lot of different things. I know right now we're kind of zoomed in. We're going to zoom out too and talk about some macro level trends around AI. You touched on them, actually. One of them, when you said you do these presentations with certain groups, and it was with a manufacturing group, you said many times what you'll do is you'll follow the biggest and brightest futurists and kind of take like the average or the mean of what they're talking about in terms of those predictions. Just out of curiosity, what are some of those? What are some of those that you're seeing are out there for the next few years?
Well, I think if we look at the next 3 years, for example, I'll give them themes. I think 2025, which is obviously the year we're in, is the rise of the agentic workforce. I think we're going to see the rise of agents. And that's kind of like my focus with my cohort right now, is to change your mindset about AI. People tend to approach it as a piece of software, and they approach it from a kind of a generalist mindset. I tend to, and we can talk through some case scenarios later, but I tend to want to look at it as a team of assistants that can be very specialized in different areas. And I think that when people understand that, that's going to prepare them for the agent workforce that's coming. Already, you can spin up and build agents, and you can license agents right now, and you can get a sales agent, you can get a marketing assistant agent. I still believe that those are somewhat generalist, and the best ones are when you have agents you can either customize that know not just their specialty but their company. But I do think that's where we're going to see that. It might come on to the masses as the next Siri, the next Alexa. I mean, we've kind of already had those agentic relationships. They're just going to get smarter and being able to do more things with us. I'm
not quite sure how to help you with that.
Alexa just thought I asked her something.
Yeah, she just joined the conversation.
Yeah. I think like OpenAI just released its operator thing, so those are kind of like micro agents where they can go out and make dinner reservations for you and things like that. So we're just seeing the tip of that iceberg. But when we talk about how quickly this is moving exponentially, you'll start to understand how quickly these agents are going to come on board and how much is at stake with that. Then I think next year is when we start trusting. That'll build up trust with AI more, right? Everybody's still kind of seeing it as the stoned intern that has hallucinations. And that, man, I've got to tell you, that's starting to change a lot with the reasoning models. There's something there that's pretty incredible. So I think as we build trust and we go into 2026, then's when we start seeing what I would call that as the year of automation. So we start seeing a lot of tasks being automated. we'll just see in a lot of the start of a lot of job displacement that we're already seeing the foretelling of right now. So we'll have to go with that. And then the year after that's probably the year of the robot, where it starts hitting manufacturing and more of that, and probably more autonomous collaboration. Now that we've developed this trust, I think humans will start finding their place alongside AI, not under AI, maybe not over AI, but maybe with AI in their jobs and their careers and their things like that. And yeah, that's kind of the next three. I'm pretty confident.
I'm going to have to call you George Lucas. That's a trilogy right there, the AI trilogy that's coming. I dig that. So agentic in 2025 this year, and then building trust that next year in 2026 and using those things. And then 2027, then is probably where we start to see more of the boom of, hey, this is becoming a really commonplace thing. Like pretty much everyone, you're going to be in the minority if you're not using it, if you're not trusting it, probably.
Oh, absolutely.
By 2027.
Then you start seeing it. I mean, for the masses, you're going to see it in everything, right? I mean, I firmly believe in 3 years we'll be able to walk into a Costco and buy a robot that can assist us with chores around the house. I mean, there's already, for about $30,000, I'll buy you one right now if you want. And I think a lot of people think NVIDIA is making chips, but what their big thing is that they're doing is they build virtual environments running on all their tech stacks. And so basically they can take an LLM instance like OpenAI, and then they can put it in a virtual robot in a virtual world, and a large manufacturing company could come to them and they could build their whole plant operation in virtual space. And then they can create all these virtual robot agents and put them in there. And that, I think this is the other thing people don't understand, is that robots, time doesn't exist for AI. So we learn through expertise and then learn how to exercise or not exercise that expertise through our experiences, right? And those experiences take a lifetime. AI, then in that training of learning what's right and wrong, can live 1,000 lifetimes in milliseconds, right? So they can train robots to have 20 years of experience on that plant floor, and then they can take those AI things and put them in actual robots and put them in a plant setting. So I think that's their long game.
That's just fascinating to think about. In the previous episode with Enrique Rubio and Matt Burns, we talked a little bit about the way HR is going to shift. Is the more that we start having like actual agents as employees, AIs, that are working along with our human staff, is that IT and HR are going to have to work collaboratively with the programming of those agents. They're going to have to be programmed with the culture, with the norms of understanding how to work with teammates, right?
Oh, there are so many,
just like the humans are.
There are so many internal adaptations and ethical things that we have to work out. And the thing is, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to work them out reactively rather than proactively, because there's not going to be enough time. But you brought up the IT and HR working together. I liken it to one of the disruptions I saw in my career. Is I remember when I had the epiphany. I owned an agency at the time, an ad agency, and we were doing digital marketing. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, and this was kind of another oh shit moment in my career, was that the disruption that was caused by marketing was caused by the solo entrepreneur who was using these incredible marketing tools and platforms to be a one-person show to execute what an agency or a team of people could do, right? So very similar. I think it was Overstock.com that sent the flare up to the whole marketing world. They fired their marketing department, took their IT director, and put him in charge of marketing. And he's like, what? And it's like, well, you understand the data and the website, and you did that. And even after having that epiphany moment, I tried to build a digital agency where, it's like, okay, we're going to get all the analytics. We're going to gather all this data for ROI and engagement and all that. But we still were structured in a way where, the designer did the design, the development team worked on the website, the writers wrote the copy, right? The typical stuff. And what I realized is that made sense, but that delay is when you miss the benefit of the data in real time. the advantage that the solo entrepreneur who understood all those things could do is that they're like, wow, the messaging is hitting at top of the funnel. I'm driving all kinds of people to the landing page, but they're not converting. So I'm going to make some tweaks to the CTA and see if I can impact that. And they're making those kind of things in real time. I think we're going to then, I just use that as a backstory for disruption. We're going to see like the role that we started with mine. It needs to be a hybrid of IT and HR. It's that blending together where I understand the technology, but I understand there's a cultural thing going in here involving people that they have to work really closely together. That's going to be an interesting scenario. See how this play out.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we joked on the first episode, like we're putting our hopes into HR and IT communicating and collaborating really well together. And we know that they're going to do it, but it's probably going to stretch some things in terms of communication because I'm not aware of too many HR and IT departments that work hand in hand so intimately together. Traditionally, it's what they're going to now.
If you think about it, their emotional intelligence and capability are almost diverse. That's why they took different career paths. Like, the IT guys, generally, not to disparage any IT people out there, they're great IT people, but a lot of them are IT people because they don't really like people.
Yeah, exactly. And like the very technical, the very, black and white, the programming and stuff like that. And it's interesting to think now that that's going to bleed into a lot of HR operations now that we'll have programmed employees and AI agents that'll be working alongside humans. And so it's going to be really interesting to see those relationships of those leaders play out. But I would definitely think most CEOs that you're going to be relying on those two leaders in your organization in particular of really helping pave the road of what's the strategy and what's the execution of having strong human AI dynamics and teams inside the organization. It's going to take both. It's going to take the smarts from HR on the people side of it, typically speaking, and it's going to take the smarts from the IT side of how to go about programming and making sure the AI agents are a constructive, healthy part of the culture too.
Absolutely. And it's really going to take a mindset now that's almost like an accelerant of some of the things that HR and leaders have been talking about for a long time, but maybe have drug their foot on. And that's creating cultures of empowerment, right? And recognizing the people that are not the worker bees who really can create systems and don't have their ego tied to the way they go about their job or the tools they use. So those people are going to have to be elevated. And then programs like Dream Maker or Dream Manager, right? Where it's like, we're going to have a culture here. We're going to have HR work with people that in achieving your dreams might lead you to something outside this company someday, to a career outside that company. And that's okay, right? Those type of programs and that type of mindset is critical. And I think the companies that already have that ingrained in their culture are probably going to be able to adapt more quickly.
By the way, shout out to Floyd Consulting Group, Matthew Kelly and Kate Volman, partners here at People Forward Network. We love the Dream Manager program. And to your point, absolutely see how those types of supports are just going to become increasingly important to help people feel tied to purpose, to tie the things that they're doing to dreams, right? And kind of hopping off the hamster wheel, so to speak, especially as certain types of job functions or tasks, more of that does get offloaded to AI. It's going to be a good recalibration moment, I think, for folks to think well about work and the value that comes from work and what are the things that do bring them energy that they want to be spending their time on, and then connecting it to their dreams, to your point.
Exactly. I mean, the good news in all of this, the silver lining is if those three general predictions I made for the next 3 years play out, that third year is where the job disruption probably really starts being felt, right? But the beauty of this is that this is not an industry specific or a company specific disruption. This is transcendent. This impacts everything. So the positive things that a company's trying to do are going to happen externally as a whole. So, without jumping into like, or would we move to a UBI or what, hopefully that the culture and the world starts seeing the financial implications of automation and robotics on just supply chain and cost of living in general. So, to prepare people for a future outside the company, that's not as big of a task as it seems like it is today, right? It's that, again, I think I keep going back. I'm a huge fan of the Dream Manager program too. I was fortunate enough to have a client that just implemented it as well as I've seen, and I saw how transformative it was for their culture. But I think that type of thing, that's like, okay, we're going to use AI and we're going to do that, but at the same time, we want you to personally, to know what are your dreams and how can AI help you achieve those, and where do you see yourself, and how can you leverage things for a life outside this company.
You touched on a lot of interesting things there. One that let's go there real quickly is kind of this concept of like supply and demand. Do you follow Peter Diamandis?
I don't follow him, but I'm familiar with. Yes.
He was talking about how, in the future, once we really are up to production levels with AI, where when you think about supply and demand, that like the supply side can keep up with demand or even exceed demand, that we should be seeing lowering of prices for a lot of things that traditionally have been very expensive. Particularly maybe even healthcare to a certain extent, right? And that's one of the positive things he's talking about. So when you're talking about UBI, universal basic income, like if there is eventually some job displacement, is the ultimate vision, I would hope, for most of these leaders is, are we going to, have some obstacles or some hiccups along the way that have to do with, yes, there's going to be job loss, but there's going to be more job creation, yes. But also, are we getting to a point, a vision, a future that we can see that's very real, where the cost of things will be considerably lower and things will be more affordable, that things will be more accessible to people that traditionally have cost way too much money because of the incurred costs of what it cost to produce it, whatever it was, because of how, just to be honest, how expensive we humans are. The more people that you have to have on certain types of projects, the more expensive certain types of things can be. And so I think that's a picture that we want to continue to hang on to is, the purpose of this is, yes, to become more productive, more efficient when we're talking about AI. But that one of the big fruits or the benefits from it over time that we need to be striving toward is making things more affordable, especially right now. I mean, everyone is feeling the pinches of inflation and have been for several years, right? Of like, you're going to the grocery store, you're buying the same stuff, but now your grocery bill isn't $120, now it's $180 kind of thing. Having a future where you think about, that the grocery bill would actually go the opposite direction eventually because logistics is going to cost less. Procurement of goods and services is going to cost less eventually. I just want to reinforce that for our listeners that when you hear AI and you hear these massive changes of AI entering into the labor market, yes, there's going to be change, but also where it's going to lead is it's going to lead eventually to more affordability of a lot of goods and services that, to be honest, a lot of folks, unfortunately, can't currently afford. And that is a very bright thing in the future for us to be optimistic about.
Absolutely. One of the people I follow, they're very adamant that playing those developments out, that the cost of living for a family four could actually go down to $1,000 a month.
Incredible.
So if that's true, a universal base income from the government for $2,000 a month, because the government's going to have benefits of all this as well. That's a likely scenario, and I think we're going to see this divergence. And again, not to jump ahead, I think within organizations you see that there are the orchestrators and the worker bees, right? And those need to coexist within a company. I think that it's all the worker bees that are going to be displaced. Anything that's a skill or a task, and we're not just talking blue collar workers, we're talking about white collar knowledge workers as well. So I think people are going to have this choice. It's not a bad thing. It's a wonderful choice. It's that okay, I'm I'm a creative, creator, entrepreneurial type spirited people. I'm going to figure out how to use all these AI tools as um, accelerants for what I want to do, right? And I'm going to create more, I'm going to do more, and I'm going to build more. Whether it's a company, a business, a consultancy, or to write, to publish, to create, to make movies, all those things. But then you're going to have this base of people like my wife, for example. She's a worker bee. She's one of those people that's wired like she'd be happy on an assembly line. Show me how to put these widgets together and let me talk to the person next to me that's doing the same thing. And she would just love that all day. Now, that said, she also likes to build things around the house and do crafts and things like that. So I think those people they're gonna find a utopia as well. They might be out of work, but they're gonna make a good living on the UBI and then be free to pursue what their passions and what their meaning in life is. So I do think I'm more optimistic about it than pessimistic. That said, the only thing that does give me pause is the greed of corporations. I mean, can we ensure that all this profit and all that is actually going to go to bringing prices down and not line somebody's pockets? That's why I like one of the other proposals I've heard on the table is a automation profit share of sort, where it's like there's like some baseline worth, almost like the stock market, where all these companies that benefit from automation and robotics and AI, all that money gets pooled and distributed as dividends to all the citizens and all Americans. So you're getting paid dividends by the benefit of AI on the different sectors of business.
Hey, anybody who can't get behind that, I mean, come on. How would you rather be getting like a paycheck because of how well things are going than being told every year of how much you owe and you have to pay back, right, to the government? That you have an economy that's working that way that benefits everybody. What you also shared there, Vince, the other day I was chatting with someone about, if more of the traditional type jobs, the next 5 to 10 years, if more of those types of things do go to AI, what's the type of work as human beings that we will want and can be doing types of things? And a lot of those are going to be missional driven, humanitarian types of things that you were alluding to, which is, what if we're working on things to solve hunger around the whole world, that literally no one goes with not having enough food, right? What if we pull together and we work on clean water around the entire world, that literally throughout the entire world there's accessible, clean drinking water for everybody? What if there is appropriate health care for every single person around the world? Like, these are things that have eluded us for so long for myriad reasons, whether it be greed, whether it be because of costs, related to those things, or whether it be because we all were so busy in our traditional work that we couldn't contribute to causes for the greater part of humanity, right? That we will start to have an awakening, I believe, to your point, where more of us will have this potentially additional time freed up because of the things that AI is doing for us, where we can be thinking about those things. What are the nonprofits? What are the causes? What are the humanitarian things that I want to contribute toward, that I want my legacy and impact to be about? And that's an exciting thing to think about too, that the more that we get to a point where AI is taking care of maybe more of the repetitive, the mundane types of tasks, that even over just these next few years, we should have, in theory, free up more time to be able to do those types of things and focus on them. Any opinions on that type of stuff? Am I way off base there? Or do you think that's a reality
you're
we can
absolutely
reach?
dead on, and I think it touches on what I think is probably not personally, but at a personal level, the biggest challenge, and it's an existential one. I mean, managing a career where I managed creatives, one of the first things I would always have to do with an employee was detach their ego from their work. A lot of young creatives and designers get their ego from what they created. It's that whole, I made this thing, right? And that prevents them from being a true problem solver, because it's more about them getting strokes than it is actually solving the problem. I think that that is the existential level, that a problem or challenge that we're going to have at a personal level. It's where will I find truth and meaning for those people that are currently finding truth and meaning from their job? It's that whole like, hey, tell me about yourself. Well, we start with what we do. Well, what we do isn't who we are. And I think we're going to be forced to finally confront the reality of that. Because if I don't have to work and I don't have a career, then what is the things that are important to me? What are how do I want to take advantage of this? And to your point, that could be a real utopia for some people. My concern is there's going to be a lot of people that don't confront that very well, and those are the people that could be victims of just being captives of AI. It's that whole like, okay, I don't have to work, and I've got this real-time AI-powered headset I can put on, and I can, sensory play out an interactive world that I live in, where I'm a rock star or a great surgeon or whatever, right? Is that life more fulfilling? Is that giving me more dopamine hits than real life, because I haven't confronted where I really get my truth and meaning from? I think those are the type things that we have to really contemplate, and I hope play out for people.
I think it sounds like something that's simple to do, like develop that kind of like self-awareness and what your why is, for lack of a better word. That's some tough work though, isn't it, Vince?
It is tough work. And I think you find out, as you get older and you talk to enough people, you gravitate to the people that have worked that out, right? There seems to be this, it's that ease, that lack of insecurity, that freedom to be who they are, that I think innately those are the people that we know that's how you're supposed to be, right? And so people are attracted to each other. But then there's also the people you can just understand, they've kind of have that guarded insecurity that they'd rather, medicate through activities than actually confront those kind of deep soul searching issues.
It's tough. It's tough to sit with yourself sometimes.
Oh, you tell me.
Right.
Yeah. I think I'm finally to the point where, my mom and sister Mara don't come out of the closet at night and beat me with a stick and tell me how bad I suck.
Right. Well, and what is it? I can't remember the numbers, but psychological research really clear on this. I don't know the numbers, so I don't want to butcher it. But essentially, research is really clear. Our own self-talk, our own self-thoughts is predominantly negative. It's not positive.
Absolutely.
For every single human being. It's
right.
I think it's almost, if I remember right, I think it's almost like a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 ratio in terms of negative self-talk, negative ideas in our own heads about ourselves, than positive affirmations that we think about ourselves. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I'm an armchair philosopher. So there's a couple things that always come to mind in that. Like one, of course, being a marketer, I'm very aware of the art of negativity bias, right? That's what divides us right now, is that, and it's something through whether it's evolution or adaptation in nature or whatever. It's like, you look out and hunters gatherers, they look out and they see, 10 watermelons and one lion. Well, our DNA is like, it's the lion that we pay attention to, right? Because if we don't do that, the watermelons don't matter. And that's innate in us. So that's why, marketing has existed in the news media on just like the negative stuff is what gets the headlines. But if you're just constantly taking in negative stuff, then you're everything you ingest has repercussions, whether you're eating it, watching it, listening to it, or absorbing it in some manner, right? So that negativity bias is strong, and that leads to bad self-talk. But the other thing, I love Plato's cave allegory, right? It's like, the prisoners in the cave, and they see reality as just shadows, and at some point somebody becomes enlightened and realizes, no, wait a minute, those are just shadows. We're in a cave, and there's a fire that's casting that, and then they go outside the cave and then they come back in, and that's all part of it. But I think it's a great analogy of how futile communication is. And if you think about it, the internet itself is postmodernistic. We're all just casting shadows in our personal brands that really aren't ourselves. So we really live in a very, we're all in that cave right now, and it's going to take a real enlightenment to realize that the things that the likes and the vanity metrics and all that stuff aren't real. And I do think that's going to be a positive side of AI generated media, is that there's going to be so much of it. And there's going to be so much, because AI is just like this clear distinction of what's artificial. It's in its name, right? It's artificial intelligence, that there's going to be this clear cut and divide between authentic humans and relationship and everything else, right? That's my hope.
It's like you want the seal of approval on this was created by and supported by real humans, right? Because there's going to be such a proliferation. You already see it. So much stuff that's already out there from bots, on the different social media platforms and image creation and stuff like that, that the stuff that's truly human is going to become priceless. You and I have talked before. We're both music junkies. We love music, which let's go there here in a minute. But
yeah,
that kind of stuff, I think we're going to look at. And you even think about like a lot of post-apocalyptic movies that set place in like a dystopian future. So many of those, when they come across things that have to do with days past, things that are of high value, what's the stuff that they have that they're holding on to? They come across books, they come across literature, they come across art, they come across music. And that's the stuff that the people that are living in the future, they're holding on to those things. They're like, these are the things that are really valuable. This is the stuff that we lost that we want to continue to treasure and pull moving forward. And I think the creatives, so much of that stuff around the humanities is just going to become even more important the more that we have AI proliferation around us in many positive ways. It's also going to mean, I think, there's going to be more of us seeking true, authentic community, true, authentic human connection, true, authentic, real things made by real humans that we're going to seek out and want to be a part of.
I think we're going to, I could always draw as a child. And so everybody said, oh, you're going to be an artist someday, right? Well, I could also think too. And I went to a Jesuit high school. And when you tell a Jesuit you want to be an artist, they put you in a geometry class, right? And I remember I got to a point with my career path where I was going to go to Heron, and my dad introduced me to a guy, and I heard the phrase commercial art for the first time. And he basically, to my dad's chagrin, basically said, you can be an artist and still not be a fine artist, and actually, take your creativity and put it into a commercial business sector and make money. And so I early on, I always understood that distinction between there's a part of art that's commodity art, and then there's the stuff that has soul, right? And I think some people, we can confuse the two. There's some overlapping, right? Because we just decide that there's a flavor that we like so much that we just then buy it for the flavor. But then to go back to the music thing we're talking about, it's like so much music's commercial, but then there's these songs, it's that old three chords and a soul, right? Or three chords and the truth. We recognize when something is from the heart, when it's real. And I think those are the things that are the human experience. It's the people that have lived out the blues, or the people broken on the wheels of living, that through their sufferings they have a story to tell. I always tell people I loved U2 when they were broke and angry. Not so much when they thought they were godlike and wanted to educate us all. It's the paradox of the creative, right? It's the muse of hardship creates some great art. It's really hard to do that in success.
So the soul piece, I'm glad that you brought that up. That's really fascinating about putting your soul into your work. And when you said that, my mind immediately went to, is this why we have employee engagement problems? Is because for so long, many of us humans, we've been doing work that should be done by artificial intelligence. It just wasn't around yet, right? That the reason so many people report like not being actively engaged in work or feeling the sense of fulfillment and meaningfulness from the work is because that a lot of the work we've had to do has been mundane, repetitive type stuff that maybe doesn't have higher level value of what we're seeking. And I never thought about that before until you just brought that up. And so maybe this whole concept of like, the people we do see in life that you can tell the work that they do is connected to their soul, that they're pouring their soul into it, whether it be the musician, the artist, the CEO, right?
Yeah.
You can
Right.
experience those things in work too, but there's so few people that experience it. It's got me wondering, since you said that, is that going to be a positive side of AI deployment? Will we start to see more people bringing their soul to work in whatever it is that they're doing, because they're going to be doing more human connection, humanitarian potentially type work? What do you think about that?
I think we've already seen the cracks of that had nothing to do with AI, right? I think it comes from the younger generations. And, it depends on who you follow and what you subscribe to from a philosophy or a psychological standpoint. But I think that the one is that we learn those rules and things from gameplay as a child. And the difference of the younger generations is that the games they play is a lot different than the games that I played with my friends in the woods behind the house. They're playing them virtually and online. And one of the things they've learned is that, okay, if I get killed in this virtual game, I just reboot and I either play a new game or I start a new life. And I think we've seen that generation enter the workforce, right? Where the older leaders want to see that as irresponsibility, but really it's a generation that has refused the captivity of this work for 20 years and give your soul to a place and they'll take care of you. It's more of this, no, I'm an independent freelancer. I'm entrepreneurial and I'll work at this company as long as it continues to give me the lifestyle and I can learn and grow. But at some point I'm going to move on and do my own thing, and it's the the side hustles, right? Well, the side hustles are usually the thing that gives them passion or money or whatever, that to afford them the life they want. So I think we've seen those chinks in the armor already. And I think there's this pulling off the blinders that we've really been held captive by the corporate mechanism and built, our monetary system of capitalism as capitalists on top of that, on the backs of hardworking people. And I think that's kind of the chains that are to be broken. That's why we shouldn't see AI as a threat. To your point, might be the very mechanism that's required to liberate us so we can all chase our dreams.
I love that. AI will be the very mechanism to liberate us so we can chase our dreams. I love that. You need to trademark that. Make a t-shirt out of it.
I think I just did. Thank you.
There you go. And if only you were the chief AI implementation officer at a company that could start to put that apparel out, right?
That's it. I might know a man.
You might know somebody.
I might know somebody.
Exactly. Right. So let's say that's the future that we get to. What is that? What does it take for people to become more self-aware of, like, what's the stuff that's really of interest to them? Like the stuff that they would pour themselves in. So, because I think a lot of people, and it could be a lot of our listeners, they're like, I can't even imagine, like, if I'm not doing my typical job, what would I be doing instead? What is there any advice, any type of stuff that you recommend to folks to be thinking about right now
that's
be
the
thinking that
$1 million
way?
question, is it, right? It's funny you say that. I actually built a GPT that's free to use on the GPT marketplace, and it's called Dream Engine. And I spent a lot of time architecting the prompt so that I fell into this prompt engineering thing where I realized a lot of people don't know what questions to ask of AI. And so I went down this path like, well, can I make AI be the thing that questions you and draws things out from you? And I did it and created this thing called BizWiz, and I showed it to my daughter, and she's like, well, can I use this to help? Because she has my oldest daughter is one of those people, and both my daughters are this way, is where they're really gifted with a lot of different creative talents, and so they get creative ADD. Like like my oldest, she can sing and she can write music and she makes jewelry and all this stuff, and so anyway, she's like, well, help me figure out what I really want to do. And so I thought, well, I could adapt this to do this Dream Engine thing. So, you just start by saying hello, and then it introduces itself, and it just kind of asks you then what are you passionate about? And then just through questioning, it helps kind of draw that out of you. But I think that is a existential question that a lot of people, because they're so busy, and maybe the negative self-talk, like you thought, I think that's the other thing. A lot of people don't believe they're deserving of that type of life, that's the life that you're going to have someday when you retire. But yet, we've seen history play out where people retire and all their identity was in their career, and now they're lost. They don't really know what that is, right? They thought it was, living on a boat or playing golf all the time, and then they can't understand why that doesn't give them fulfillment at a deeper level.
So going back to what we were talking about earlier, do you think that you'll ever have a humanoid robot in your house?
Oh, I know. Well, yeah.
That's cool. What do you think it'll do for you that'll help you out the most?
I don't like home repair. I don't like maintenance and stuff. So I think that's great. If it's just something that like walk the dog or, I don't know. I probably won't want to give that up. I like my dog a lot. I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be so commonplace. I mean, to go back what you said earlier, we talked about this, everything coming down, in price. The thing that people to understand is that AI is already begatting AI. So these large language models are moving far so exponentially because they're creating themselves in this loop. And that same thing's going to happen with robots. Robots are going to build robots. And so, what the $30,000 robot of today might be $800 at Costco, with a membership, in 3 or 4 years. So that's why I say I might own one. It might be one of those things like, well, yeah, everybody has one, right?
I think so. And I'm probably going to have it do the same things you just said. Like, I am not good at home repairs, so if it can make sure that our HVAC system's doing great, if there's ever plumbing and electrical type stuff that could be done, that's great. I even think about, so my dad too, my dad is in assisted care. It's traditionally a tough industry to find a lot of humans to work there, right? It's just an industry with a lot of high turnover. It can be a challenging job, to do those jobs. What if one day, if there's like certain levels of companionship of like, there may be humanoid robots that are playing chess with, folks that are in those facilities too. Not that we don't want humans to do those things too, but it's like, if there could be almost like round the clock support and additional supports and engagement and connection in those types of environments too, with those people, even when other humans may not be able to provide that, that's another just like incredible thing that blows my mind of what we might be able to do with it.
Well, I think a reason why that's a really tough question to answer right now is that I don't think we understand what our attitude and perspective of AI is going to be like in 3 years. I think, and that's kind of my point with a lot of with my talks with people right now is quit thinking of it as a tool or a piece of software. Think of it as a relationship. And when you have a relationship with your strategic GPI or GPT or whatever you've created with AI, and you start having these different touches with it that are kind of a relationship, and you see experientially that it learns about you and gets better at your job, just like an intern would, right? I mean, I think that was my post on LinkedIn today, is we need to have a mentality about AI that's like hiring an intern. You tell it very implicitly what's expected of it, who it is, and you remind it of that. But over time, that assistant, it earns your trust if it is listening and paying attention. And that's the transformative thing that's happened with these recent reasoning models, is I've noticed that it just starts to it understands me and it anticipates what I need. And so I'm starting to see it as more as an amplifier of what I really want to accomplish and the velocity at which I can do that. And I think if the people start getting that taste of that and that mindset, then it's not some utility I go and buy. It's an extension of that. It's that I have the momentum that AI in my life in different areas allows me the freedom to pursue what's really important with my time.
That's so good. Can you imagine one day we all have humanoid robots just like we have pets, only they're super intelligent and more intelligent than we are?
Exactly. I mean, again, I don't think we can comprehend that fully or know what it is, but
right.
we'll also have, more self-driving cars and taxis, and we'll see AI a lot more quicker, The
What's
beef is that,
fascinating about that, Vince, is there's been a lot of psychological research too on why is it so challenging to do things that are good for ourselves in the future. And the prevailing research has shown that your future self is a stranger. You're not really connected to that person. You don't know. It's why so many people struggle with saving enough money the way that they do. They know it's good for their future self, but their future self feels like a stranger. They don't know who that is. And I think sometimes all this stuff with AI, it feels like it's so far out in the future that that's kind of a mental block or a mental hurdle too, is we think, well, I'll never see that coming, or that's never going to get here. And I think a lot of people just think in the here and now of like, oh yeah, ChatGPT, it's around. That's what artificial intelligence is, not understanding that like later this year, it's going to look a lot different. 2 years from now, even more different from that. That it's kind of hard to project those things. But one number that to me is really fascinating when we think about what will our world like tangibly look like, the beings that are on this earth. This is from Elon Musk, so this is just from one person, but he said that by 2040, so in 15 years, there will be approximately 10 billion humanoid robots on Earth. 10 billion. That just blows my mind. When you zoom out and you hear those kind of numbers, to think, yeah, literally there'd be enough for every single family. And then companies obviously are going to have a lot also doing and producing work that number just absolutely blows my mind, that potentially there'd be around 10 billion humanoid robots within the next 15 years.
Well, I think that's the part that is just really hard to get our head around. I think, we try to make predictions based on what we've seen in the past, right? So we look at the advancement of technology. I remember in high school, this is how old I am, I had to read a book called Future Shock in the 70s, in the late 70s, right?
Alvin
And that
Toffler,
book
right?
was about the impact of technology was having on people and the advancement of it. But that's in the 60s. That book is like, that was so far ahead of its time. And I bet that, if that author was still alive today, he'd be like, oh my God, this is more than anything I anticipated. And I think that's the part about all these developments that are getting ready to hit that people don't understand. It's not just AI. It's a combination of all types of things coming together in the perfect storm that's going to create a future that's really hard for us to comprehend. We've stayed on the real positive side of this, but that's part of that scary stuff that my wife doesn't like me talking about. There's a book by Mustafa Salman called The Coming Wave. And Mustafa was the gentleman that left Google and started DeepMind. And they started in 2010. And the whole idea was, can we take and map all the neurons and pathways and do everything that the human brain does and turn that into software? And that seemed ridiculous in 2010. And then obviously coming years, and by 2015, they're like, hey, we might be able to actually pull this off. And then subsequent years. And he actually left and then became kind of alarmist. I mean, he's going around saying, hey, there's some things we need to be thinking about right now. So a few of those things is that the advancement of AI and intelligence. And this is one of the things I tell people in my conversation. Einstein's IQ was around 180, 185. The highest IQ of a human recorded was somewhere around 220, 225. The IQ of ChatGPT 2, when it came out, was about that of a low high schooler. So I don't know what that is. Maybe that's 70, 75 in that area. By the end of 2024, AI was at a intelligence level of a PhD. So now we're talking somewhere maybe around 140, 145, more. And I think the average American's, IQ level is around 90 to 95 in that area. So, superior intelligence. Now that AI is begatting AI and doesn't need human intervention to grow and learn, we're going to see in next year IQs in the high 200s, 300s. a scale that we've not seen at a human level. What does that mean? How do we measure it? Then if you put that on quantum computing in 2028, 2029, now we're talking about an IQ level, and that's where they call ASI, or artificial superintelligence, and that's the race that all the nations are heading towards. That is our modern arms race. We're talking about IQs in the tens of thousands, and we can't even comprehend what that means.
No.
So you have that. You have other technology that people might not know. I mean, we can. Do you know that they have DNA printers? We can print DNA. They had in a lab somewhere. They actually printed a human brain and then taught it to play Palm. So
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, so we're going to see this. It's fascinating, but it's kind of creepy too.
It is, for sure.
Right. But we will see this convergence then of artificial, mechanical, and biological. Those will all be blended and melded together. And that's that cyborg world that we thought, well, that's just a science fiction novel. We'll never see it. So, there's some things out there like, how do you plan for a future that you can't even comprehend what it's going to be like, because it's going to be so dramatically different than anything that you ever imagined.
The thing that really brought it home for me, when you're talking about the quantum computing, you were talking earlier about there's these big waves. Artificial intelligence is one of them, but we have these other waves that are tangential to it that's also just accelerating and advancing things at a ridiculous level. One of those is quantum computing. Another one is blockchain too, that's kind of going on, the decentralization of things. But like the quantum computing, what really brought this home for me was when Google started going public about their Willow quantum processing chip and putting it in terms that each of us could understand, because all of this stuff, the IQs you're talking about in the tens of thousands, a lot of that stuff is hard to understand. Here's what it made sense to me, and when Google explained it this way. They said what that quantum processor chip is able to do, the Willow one that they just publicly announced a few months ago, it can do in 3 minutes what it would take the most intelligent current supercomputers that we have on the planet to do. It would take them over 1,300 years.
Right.
So we're going from what would take, with our best technology we had, it would take it 1,300 years or something like that to do. That now has been whittled down to 3 minutes with this quantum processor chip. That's how quickly things are changing, and that's the foundation. Those will be the types of chips that will eventually be going into robots and things like that.
It depends on what expert you follow, but there are some that believe, and certainly with Google's announcement, it's like it's there, but they can't release it because there would be no security against it. So, for example, the most you brought up crypto and blockchain. That's the most secure thing that we've developed, to the point that there are some people that want to move our currency to that and our way of monetization. Well, you throw quantum computing in the mix, that can be hacked in no time. Right now, the permeations of blockchain are multiple lifetimes, but a quantum computer could probably break it in a day. So there are some technologies that are kind of like in the pipe, but we don't know how to constrain what the power of that technology could do to the systems that are in place.
And we even saw some of that to a certain degree with DeepSeek, right? DeepSeek had its moment. Right now we're doing this episode on, what is it, February 20th or February 19th? February 20th or 19th? 2 or 3 weeks ago. DeepSeek became all the rage. Everyone was like, whoa, what's this thing? It's open source AI from China. Let me hop on this thing. This thing, what it can do is so incredible compared to ChatGPT. And then guess what? A lot of people found out this thing can't pass a single security test.
Right.
And you may have just brought a Trojan horse onto whatever device it is directly from China. And so it quickly got shut down and taken offline. But that's just a small little example of how quickly things are progressing. They can become available. People may latch onto them without taking into consideration a lot of the security concerns that comes along with that, and what information are you making accessible to it? And it goes even beyond DeepSeek. Probably a lot of people don't even realize if you're on a free version of GPT, anything you put in there is what it is learning on. So it's not like it's just private information to you. If you're putting anything IP related to your business on the free ChatGPT plan, that means it's becoming part of the brain of OpenAI, of ChatGPT, and could potentially be deployed in an answer based off of a prompt from other companies or other people.
There's actually a case study that's pretty famous, and I forget the company, but there was an engineering company or development firm in Japan that, right at the start of this, they took their development team took all the documentation of their next product release and just uploaded it into the free version and started asking questions. And they're like, it was like a parlor trick to them. And they're like, hey, look at this, look what we could do. Isn't this great? This is fabulous. And then all of their IP was in there. And they realized to their horror that you could ask it questions about their next product and it would tell them, exactly what they were working on. And there were some people that that lost their jobs over it, and there's certainly some rules set in place. But exactly, I mean, there's and again, I think you recognize I'm an optimistic, but the thing that does give me pause is that historically, we have not played well with our toys, right? So I think it's really important that we have conversations about guardrails and ethics and protectionism now, because somebody will take advantage of this. I mean, again, you combine some of these technologies, you can, if I can spend $250,000 and build a device that prints proteins, what keeps me from using AI to create some unknown carcinogen or biological weapon and then printing it out and releasing it to the masses? I mean,
right.
We got to think this thing through. We can't just have these disparate technologies being driven by capitalism with with blinders on to what they're going to do and not understand how some of these things could be put together to harm us all.
So let's go there real quick. Like a few weeks ago, this whole concept of Stargate here in the United States that was put forth by I think it was the executive branch, the Trump administration, something around investing in AI and trying to take more of a proactive approach to understanding AI, what it means for the economy, how to do it in a safe and secure way. What's your take on Stargate? It's still kind of fuzzy to me, but is there some optimism that maybe we're going to start moving in a direction of trying to put some good policy in place around AI creation and use?
I hope so, but there's so many levels to that, that really make it a tough thing to answer. On the surface, there's the arms race, and what I talked about ASI, and whether you're a patriot or not, I hope you want the U.S. to win that, right? I don't want some other country to win that. And if another country that had a not so great worldview had artificial superintelligence before anybody else, then that could be dangerous. So there's a defensive aspect to it where we have to have the wake up call and say, hey, we need to put everything we've got in this, because the private sector, the corporations, will build it on their own. So like SpaceX figured out stuff that the government couldn't do. So we need this initiative that combines the government with the private sector for the benefit of the country, right? I do believe that. Now, that said, I do hope there's democratization across all nations where they have access to this great utility of intelligence. You want that. Then there's the level of the economy, right? It's like, okay, all this intelligence. If you look at this intelligence, it's like a utility. It is the next oil, right? So you want to be the country that has the infrastructure that is providing that utility to the world, to have that monetarily built into your economic structure, right? There's that. So that's okay too. But then there's just that bad historic aspect of it. You talk about Manhattan Project. I mean, the people that are involved in Manhattan Project were brilliant. And what is the promise of that technology in nuclear fission? Clean energy. This could be amazing. And they brought the greatest scientists in the world, and they built a bomb. And it wasn't 15. It took another 15 years before they just started discussing again how to harness nuclear fission as an energy source. So, all those things that I started with are all well and good, but historically, we've not been able to contain good technological breakthroughs for the benefit of humanity rather than the control of some people.
That's a good point. I'd never made that connection before with the Manhattan Project. That's really insightful. And so it's one of those like, hey, the intent of this is good, but we have to be wary of the consequences and that there's going to be some bad actors that use it in potentially some nefarious ways. We've all got to be really smart about it. But that also that question of like, there's an importance here that United States, we got issues. We know that. We know we're not perfect. But when you think about potentially some other nations, like China or Russia, that if they were the ones, to potentially get to ASI levels first, what could that mean for global humanity? Those are really important, considerations that we need to think about. And hopefully Stargate maybe is just one start of putting together some good thinking around this, some good structure. But we got to execute well on it. To your point, it can't just be talking about it, because historically we haven't been very good at doing those kinds of things and making sure that those kind of advancements don't lead to world-altering types of consequences.
Exactly, and at the very least, it's the positive side of taking the corporate visionaries that will move ahead in developing this regardless, and having real conversations then with the government at a deeper level, so that the government can understand it intrinsically. What the ramifications are of it. And a case in point, I don't know if you watched any of the Senate hearings when they were talking about privacy and they were interviewing Zuckerberg. It's like, it's obvious that the questions that were being asked were so ignorant of technology that you saw the incredible gap between policymakers and their understanding of the technology that they were empowered to write laws for, right? So hopefully this kind of dialogue and learning those lessons, understand that the way our government is set up, that the people writing the laws and guiding things have to have a more intimate connection with the technologies being developed as they're being developed, not in response to how they're being used.
You're saying we need smarter politicians, Vince?
Wow. Yeah, boy, you could start a whole podcast channel just on that, right?
Right. But it is like, I think we've seen, it's like this is the biggest thing in the history of humanity, truly. Like it's that big. And so we have to have strong leadership. We've got to have smart people, both from private sector, public sector, that's coming up with good policy around it to make sure that it's a positive thing and that it doesn't get away from us. One of the other things that I think is really interesting, we should get into a little bit here, that just came out on artificial intelligence is, and I want to make sure I get this clear, but there's starting to be some research that's indicating folks that are using AI quite a bit right now, that they're starting to show that there's starting to be a drop in the problem solving or critical thinking skills of those people. In other words, leaning a little bit too heavily on the AI to do those things. I want to see if I can find that research. Oh, it came from Carnegie Mellon and Microsoft, and it just found that people who are entrusting tasks to AI, that there's already starting to be some research showing that there's a loss of some critical thinking skills when using it too much. Again, that's from Carnegie Mellon and Microsoft. Any initial reactions to that?
Yeah, I would argue that those people probably were lacking critical thinking skills in the beginning, and they probably were lacking those because they have always used technology as a crutch, and so they approached AI with the same crutch mentality. I mean, It's the whole and again, that's where we've kind of talked about that earlier, where I think our mindset has to change. It's the people who start to understand that they are the creative genius above the AI. They're just using this knowledge base and this intelligence of AI to accelerate the dreams and things that they want to accomplish, right? There are people that don't have that capability or haven't thought about it enough or have invested in enough of that orchestration, creative thinking that they then just grab the low-hanging fruit and they just use AI to do stuff for them. It's the lazy use of AI, right? It's that horrible email you get that says, "Hey, I saw that you went to Purdue and you have had some of the same people that I had, and we should have a conversation," and blah, blah, blah. And, it's obviously just AI written that has scraped my profile and has thrown this thing together. And, and then it's got 5 emojis in it and it says, our conversation could be a game changer, right? And it's just a lazy use of AI. So I think it's more in the mindset of it, how it's approached, than a direct impact of what AI is doing to us. You know what I mean?
That's
it's
good.
more, I guess it's more correlative than causative.
And I need to dive deeper into the paper, but in addition to that, I bet another part of this is there's probably an important distinction between people who already are starting on this project or task. They put some thought into it, and then they're asking the AI, like, hey, what are the blind spots? Am I missing anything here? Can you brush this up for me? Versus the folks that I think this may be a little bit more into it. Again, I've got to read more into it, but people that may just be off the bat, they haven't put really any thought into the project or whatever it might be. And it's just like, hey, we're supposed to do this, create this thing for me right off the bat without having put any forethought into it, any parameter, any structure, any thinking on your own to begin with, but just right out of the gate asking the AI to generate the thing, whatever it is.
Exactly. I mean, we have a history of using incredible technologies in a really limited fashion, right? It's like, like even even social media. It's like let's even go back. It's like, WebEx and these video conferencing softwares were around for a long time. But did you notice in pre-COVID that nobody ever turned their camera on? And it's like, well, why don't we just have a call? And it was because we took this great technology, but we fit it into our existing paradigm and just use it as a tool. And then it took some disruption like COVID to when remote workforce to go, oh, well, wait a minute. There's all this interpersonal stuff that happens here when I can see you, and maybe I should turn my camera on. And suddenly we're okay with it. Or a QR code, it's like, well, wait a minute. It's like I got to launch a piece of software or all this to do all this to it, and it's like I'm gonna use this great scanning technology that could do all kinds of stuff just to lead people to my website, right? And that's it. But then it took, us not showing a beer menu unless you unless you scan that QR code for everybody to go, I'm going to invest to learn how to use this and understand it. And there's all kinds of things that can happen on the other side of it. So, I think we tend to look at technology advancements in our existing paradigm rather than how they can empower us for something far, far greater. And I think that is the big rub with AI right now. If you approach it and, oh, you should use ChatGPT for writing. Yeah, it's great, and that's what you're doing. But gosh, it's so much more than that. And again, I don't want to harp on it, but I think since the O1 series and this reasoning model and the way it's working now, unless you have this intimate, ongoing working relationship with it, you probably are blind to the fact of how well it's learning about you and your working styles and what you want of it. And I think that it's going to take that tipping point of people experientially experiencing that to really understand and get the proper mindset of how AI can assist them.
Yeah, it's kind of like this push and pull type mentality, right? It's like you don't want to just roll in and be like, hey, do this project for me. Like, you want to at least put some thought into it beforehand. But you gotta be thinking about those things ahead of time. You gotta prompt it well. It takes critical thinking in order for you to get good output from the artificial intelligence itself, with what we have currently. And I think that relates a lot to what you posted on LinkedIn just recently about this, which was, if you think about AI, just like you do with your human team members, AI is going to have certain types of specialties probably within an organization, certain types of roles. And so, like, you wouldn't ask a chat bot to do work in your organization that's not chatbot work. I think that's brilliant what you shared. Dive into that a little bit more. But this concept of, like, as we're thinking about AI, even as we move into the agentic pieces you're talking about this year, and we extrapolate on those, that for leaders and organizations, you still want to have very clear roles, responsibilities, or ways that you're engaging with the AI, and set up parameters for it to be successful in the things that it's working on, instead of trying to stretch it out too thin across different types of things that it may not be trained on. Explain some of that to us, Vince.
Sure. Some of it I think is mindset and a way to really help you get in the proper frame of mind about how you use AI. For example, it's if you're in leadership and you're running a team, you don't hire the same type of employees. You don't have a generalist mindset. You have a specialized mindset, right? You don't hire a bunch of generalists. You hire people that are really good in a specific area, and it's a collection of that combined expertise that contributes to the success, right? And so I think that having that mindset towards AI helps us orchestrate and create and know how to use it. It also, in the past, I found, because of the limitations of tokens and its ability to concentrate and focus, that a specialized use of AI worked a lot better. Now, I do think at some point it's going to play out that you're going to have instances of AI that can do a lot of things really well. And so you might go to a more generalized use. But the specialized use mindset for example, I have a process that I started a couple years ago with my clients, where I could build a custom GPT, and I can program that GPT in the prompting setting to tell it exactly what it is and what's expected of it. And it's just a template I'd use. You are an extension of me in the area of digital marketing. I expect you to do this, conduct yourself with professionalism. I need you to help me with strategic ideas, testing, blah, 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 making recommendations, and spell that out. Really long, implicit instructions of who it is and what's expected of it. But then I could take I could do an intake form, like I call it a brand alignment form or a branded intake form, and I work with the client to answer all these questions. What is it? What's the product and service you provide? What industry and what's your selling proposition? What's your brand voice? Who's your competitors? Why are you better than your competitors? What's the persona of the people you sell for? On and on. And I would take all that, and then I would program it into that GPT. Now I had a very specific client advisor along with me. And then, for example, like, all these other use cases came from it. I got one client, and they're trying to grow in a new market. And I could use another GPT that was really good at research and do deep research. And I could start with I just did this morning, in fact, for myself. I went to the strategy GPT that's helping me with my AI presentations and all that, right? And I asked that strategy GPT, I said, I have so many options where I could take this. And it already knows, like, hey, I like to speak and I like to consult and I'm building a course and I have these digital products and I have this cohort. And it's like, I'm having a hard time understanding and keeping focus of where the low-hanging fruit is and how I want to structure this as I transition into retirement and what I want to do, right? And it said, and so I asked it, and I said, what kind of research would I need to provide you to help me better advise me in making those decisions? And it spit some snips out. And I said, will you write a prompt for me for deep research to create this paper? And it did. And then I went to another instance of GPT, clicked the deep research report, and I loaded that prompt. And it said, hey, sounds like you want to do this. And it asked me 5 questions. I hopped back over to my strategy GPT and I said, how would you answer these questions? And then it answered those questions. And then I went back to the deep research, clicked the deep research button, answered those questions. And it said, great, I'll do this. And it compiled in about 12 minutes a 21-page market analysis of the potential for somebody with my skill set in AI, from everything from teaching to advising to building, selling automations to selling agents, all those things. I went back to my advisor GPT and I said, before I load this into your knowledge base, I want you to take a look at it and I want you to rate it objectively on how well this is going to be able. Maybe I should share some of the actual dialogue with you.
While you're pulling that up, I was just thinking, David, or Vince, that so much of what you do, like you're talking about your role as, Chief AI Implementation Officer at HardingPorman, a big part of that we started with was how you're working with leaders of different teams, understand adoption, but you're also applying that same skill set that you have that you're really good at helping all of the different AIs work together. You're kind of like the communicator, the translator among them, because you see what the end is, the end in mind, and you're the one that's kind of the intermediary getting all of those different GPTs to work together to come up with a good finished product. That's brilliant.
Exactly. If nothing else, if there's no other aha moment for your listeners today, it's that start thinking of that. It's taking your leadership paradigm and saying, if I was building a team, if I had the freedom to hire 2, 3, 4 people to assist me to whether it's accomplish my dreams, to do my job better, what are those roles? And then create the instances of AI that specifically only do that. And so just this scenario here of bouncing around. And so it answered the questions. I then said, I said, let me get back to this point right here. I said, all right, before I upload this as part of your knowledge base, I'm going to share it with you for your review. I would like your honest assessment of the work and your opinion of how much value it will add in your ability to advise me. I mean, I've been just talking to this is an intimate employee with me. It understands my goals, my dreams. It has samples of my writing. It knows what I've accomplished. It's saving things into memory about me. And so I uploaded it. And it said, your high revenue AI opportunities in 20 to 25 report is highly valuable and well structured, provides thorough market insights, revenue focused analysis, clear monetization. Here's my breakdown. And it goes in, I won't share all, it goes into deep things. And then it has some areas of strengthening. And then, and then it goes into this whole section, how this might enhance my ability to advise you. It allows me to, or it says I can now guide you towards the most profitable AI business models. I can help you design a strategy that will automate 80% of the marketing for this. It allow me to help you scale rapidly without hiring a large team. I can now create a step-by-step execution strategy for your top 3 highest ROI AI revenue streams. I can help you refine pricing and launch strategy and positioning. And then it says, final verdict. I give it a 9.5 out of 10, a highly actionable, well-researched report. And then it says why. And then it gives me a few requirements. And I just ask it. I said, well, do you think I should get a prompt for you to gather the additional research, or do you think this is enough for you to advise me going forward? And it's basically, your existing research is only extremely strong, but I can absolutely advise you based on what you compiled. However, if you want to refine your strategy even further, a target follow-up prompt might help me fill in the gaps that I identified. So to give me the next prompt. But I hope that's just a kind of a scenario here of how you can have these very specific use cases and roles and use them to help you talk to another instance of it. I have and this isn't a shameless plug, but I have a course that I have a number of people in right now that I'm going to open to the general public Friday. And I call it a knowledge funnel. And what it is, it's a system that I have developed using multiple parts of AI to just assist me. So if you think about anybody that has expertise, we're basically gathering knowledge and we need to refine and distribute that knowledge, right? And so I've created 3 levels of tools. So I have a piece of software called Feedly that I can program, and Feedly goes out and it will grab RSS feeds, and it will search and pull any kind of data on any subject I say from the internet as it's published and put it into my feed. And then kind of like Tinder, I can say more of this and less of this, right? And get that. At least I heard that's how Tinder works. And then the cool thing is it'll also give me an email address, or create an email address for my account, so I can join newsletters on that subject matter, and they all go into Feedly. And then I have influencers I follow on YouTube and all that, and so I can follow all these people, and Feedly will help me find things that they posted in news. But here's my dilemma: I might end up then with 12 hours of video that I need to watch in the next 24 hours. Well, that's probably not going to happen, right? It's hard to distill all that information. So I basically then have other software where I can take and point it to those videos and grab the transcripts of all those videos, all the stuff that Feedly's grabbed. I can point it to other websites. I can record seminars and things like, and take all those notes. I can compile that into a great package, and then I can go into Notebook LM, and I can create a notebook, on a specific date or whatever, or I want to call it, how I want to organize it. I can put all that knowledge into it. I can create a briefing summary, or here's what my favorite hack I'd love to do. You click a button and it turns it into a podcast of 2 people talking about all that content. And I get in the car and I drive and I listen to that podcast. Now I have a overall knowledge of all that, and now I know what content I need to go into a deeper dive with. And so then I'll take that content, I'll go right back to my strategy GPT, and I'll load it, and I'll ask that GPT questions about that content. I'll refine it further. Then I might take something from there, and then I'll program my GPT that is sole purpose is to assist me with my newsletter. And I'll load that content into my newsletter or into my GPT, and it knows when it gets that content that the first thing it does is it reviews all of it, and it helps co-author suggestions of, here's some great news topics you should talk about this week. Here's an existential question you should ponder based on this content, and it assists me in writing that. And then I might take anything that I write from there and put it in Perplexity, because Perplexity is real good at source validation and all that, and have it make sure that all the sources are validated. Where can I add the read more links, and how can I help my audience discover? So again, that's just it's a system, a tool that then I think trains a mindset of just how you can use disparate pieces of AI for a whole operation to serve you.
What you just described there, Vince, is the crux of the challenge for every single business, which is this: how do we support our people really well?
Right.
Every single business struggles with, doesn't matter the size of, are we providing the right type of support, the right amount of support, and helping our people execute really well on their roles and deliver the results that are expected? Everything we talk about in the HR world, employee experience, stuff that has to do with culture, all of it has to do with understanding each person really well and getting not only that person, but the system of people together to work cohesively as a team to achieve incredible things, right? For the organization, for the stakeholders. And everything you just described there are wraparound supports for people inside the organization. So just imagine where I'm going with this is, if every human in an organization had their own GPT, their own, like this type of coach, this own agent that's working alongside them, that is providing them the feedback, just like you said, saying, hey, after you prompted it, you're like, I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. Here's how it could be a 10, this thing that you're working on. Imagine if every single, because one of the biggest bottlenecks in business is going back to Gallup's research, 20 years ago on, it's the manager stupid, right? That many times the bottleneck to performance throughout an entire organization is that either managers aren't equipped with the right human skills of how to provide feedback, how to lead well with their teams, but also bandwidth of time. Many times those middle managers, they've got work on their plate too that they're trying to get done. And many times the things that get set off to the side is then how you support the team members. Are you doing regular check-ins? Are you able to provide good feedback to them? What if we're moving into a future where you think about those wraparound supports? A lot of those touch points in the employee experience are really supported by artificial intelligence really well. Like, what if there are GPTs that are supporting the onboarding process whenever you bring in new talent? Helping even before then, the whole candidate experience of sourcing and finding the right talent and providing timely feedback. You often hear the number one complaint in candidate experience is when someone is like, I'm interested in that position. They never hear anything back at all, whether or not, where they are in the process. So as you were laying all that out, that just made me think of so many of the bottlenecks and challenges that business leaders have faced around the whole the human capital piece of it, of like, how do we really at a high level execute well in supporting each person throughout the entire stage of the life cycle of being an employee or even a candidate? These types of things that AI unlocks that you just unraveled for us of how you are using it, I can see that being a brilliant thing for each team member to have a GPT or GPTs plugged into certain touch points in that candidate experience or employee experience that supports the process, so that humans, when we have limited bandwidth because of the number of things we're doing, we can trust that there are other supportive employees, quote unquote, these agentic employees that can step in and provide that ongoing support and be that scaffold for us. That's everything that was going through my mind when you were describing it. Any thoughts, reactions to that?
Yeah, I think even at a low-hanging fruit level, can you imagine how much better a leader could be if he just knew how to use AI as their internal strategy sounding board, where you got a custom GPT that understands everything about your organization. And before you just make a knee-jerk reaction or take something leadership, you're like, okay, I'm thinking this, and I hope too, the other thing that's picked up in this is how you dialogue with AI. It's like, if you have you're using it in an advisory role, you've already prompted, so it has a relationship where it knows what its role is and knows clearly what's expected of it. But, just like an employee, you wouldn't just give a task. A good leader would say, I'm going to ask you to do this for me. Do you don't know enough already, or is there something that I could help you with or give you or tell you that would make your job do better, right? And you ask it that, and then you give it that, so that it understands that not only what's expected of it, but it truly has everything it needs to give the best possible answer. But back to your thing, that like any use case, like a leader could then say, before I do that, am I missing something? Is there something like that? And it's like, no, that makes great business success. Okay, well, here's my concern. I'm afraid this department, it might rub them the wrong way, or I might feel like that. What should I consider, right? And it might help with that. And I mean, that's a start, but it may be a someday where then that turns into a whole kind of middle management advisory thing, where you have specialized GPTs that are very, kind of where we started this. We talked about the stuff I might implement at HardingPorman. There might be a cultural advisory GPT. There might be a labor advisory GPT. There might be a market research GPT, right? I think it makes sense to have that mindset and develop those things and to have them customized to your unique use case rather than continue to use it in a generalized manner.
What I just heard right there, the brilliant piece of wisdom you just laid on us, is we need to talk with AI the same way we talk with people, communicate with people. Like the prompts that you were giving of like, hey, what else do I need to provide you in order for this objective? What does success look like? Those clarifying questions that many times we coach managers and leaders of people to do with their people, so that you get clear on strategy, on execution, on the things that are really important, and nothing is left up for interpretation, but it's really clear. We have to talk that same way with AI. And it gets back to that mindset shift you brought up, Vince, which is so important. We've got to stop just thinking of it as like a technology thing and thinking of it, personifying it more as like an actual person, like you're talking with a person on a team. And the more that we do that, the better results, the better learning that it will get. And so again, it all comes full circle back to kind of like those human-centric skills, right? Of if you don't have those, if you aren't communicating well with your team, if you don't have those systems and supports in place, and then you're just throwing AI into the equation, you're probably going to still struggle. But if you take a lot of those practices that you've dialed into your people operations of how to communicate, get people to work well together, be really clear and aligned on goals, expectations, execution of strategy, and you take those same things and that's how you talk with the AI, you're going to get incredible results and magnify who knows how much the results that you're going to get in the end. I didn't put 2 and 2 together until you just said that, but that's brilliant.
Well, I think this is the hard truth of it, right? I think AI can amplify the success and capabilities of a good leader, but it can also hinder a lazy leader. You know what I mean? I think it's a good leader is going to already have those skills and know how to talk to it and how to interact with it. A lazy leader who doesn't have those skills, who manages people instead of coaching them, is probably going to look at AI in that same mindset, and they're just going to have this set of disparate tasks that are not going to be the greatest success they have, and those are the people that are probably saying, it didn't work for me, or it wasn't good.
Absolutely. And that's why every organization should have a chief AI implementation officer like you. That's what I'm hearing.
Every single one.
Every single one. No questions asked. No questions asked. What do you do when you're not thinking about AI? What are you doing for fun to kind of unplug and rewind? Because even though I know this stuff energizes you, you got to unplug from it sometimes too, right? And do stuff for fun.
That's such a great question. So, and I don't want to, I just want people to understand. So when I first started trying to keep up with this, and I have a great story of why I knew this was going to be big if we get to it. But
let's go there.
Okay, let's start there, and then I'll answer a question. So I brought this. I love artifacts, right? I think that we learn we have these hinge moments in time, and I love like where I have that and I have this epiphany. I want an artifact from that to remember me forever. So it's I'll take you back. I think this book came out, let me look, 1989. This book was published. A friend of mine brought me this book, and I had just gotten out. I left school and went back to school, and my career was really right place, right time. I went to I was studying visual communications, and the guy that ran the program was like a dinosaur legend from the ad industry. He worked for a big ad agency in Detroit in the 60s and did like those car ads and all that stuff. And he just became a mentor of mine. And he drags me into his office, and he shows me a little Mac Plus for the first time. And he said, I think this is going to change everything. And he said, if you're open to it, we'd like to use you as a guinea pig, and we want you to take our traditional courses, but we want to experiment with you to figure out how we start pulling this into our curriculum. And so then I ended up getting out of school, and I couldn't beg myself a job. I was going Macintosh, and they're like, never happened here, never heard of it, we'll never do it that way. And lo and behold, a few years later, the people that wouldn't hire me are like, hey, remember that thing you said? Will you come talk to us about it? So a friend of mine hands me this book, and he worked at a type house. He was a sales rep, and they bought a case of this book, and it's called, users can't see, it's called Desktop Publishing, The Awful Truth. And I'll just read 2 paragraphs from it, if I may.
Oh, yeah.
What then is the awful truth about desktop publishing? Primarily the omissions, exaggerations, and lies perpetrated by those who manufacture and sell desktop publishing hardware and software. While they can talk ease, they forget to mention quality. When they talk photo, they forget to discuss speed and resolution. When they say complete, they neglect to mention efficient. That's no surprise. This is America, land of the free and the home of the used car. It's not illegal to say that desktop publishing can do anything and everything. And because it isn't legal, it's being said. What's pathetic is that a small group of professionals and a large group of non-professionals swallow these exaggerations whole. They actually believe in used cars driven by little old ladies on Sundays, and that a $6,000 investment can make them a writer, a proofreader, an editor, a designer, an artist, and why stop now, even a publisher. And just as an added bonus, allow them to perform all these jobs faster, more efficiently, and cheaper, and without training. And it happened. And all those people got put out of work. Took a while, but I watched type houses go away, color separators go away. We will always move to quicker and cheaper, and then we'll let the quality sort itself out. So we are going through that stage with AI. When I saw this, it was like, this is the same thing. I've lived this before. The difference is this is transcending every vertical there is. So now that I told that story, I forgot your original question. Excuse me.
Oh, I do too. I got lost. I'm lost in the moment here, listening to that. But you know what, Vince? It's so good. It's so good. And now that you remembered, I'll come right back to you. My generation and younger. So I'm an old millennial, or like a super duper young Gen Xer. I'm kind of in that. They call it a micro generation of the Zennials. I was born in '79. We've lived some life. We haven't lived enough life to see some of these huge cycles, right? And I appreciate your perspective. You let off the show talking about being 64 and you're still at it and adaptive and learning all of these incredible new things. My generation and younger, we need to hear those stories from you like you're sharing today of like, listen, we've done this before, but also this is how this is different. This is hitting every single vertical, but that this is a natural process of life, this adaptation, this evolution, and helping us remember story and sharing those stories of things like when the computer was coming out, the Mac, like you just shared, of like, we've been through this before. This is on a different level, right? It's hitting every vertical, but it's reassuring that like, hey, as a species, we have come a long way and we've still got a long way to go. And we're going to learn a lot. And so keep sharing those stories. I just wanted to share that real quick, that's really important for leaders to hear, especially that we have now more millennial leaders, I believe, than any other age group, that it has surpassed boomers and Gen Xers, that now millennials are that age group where we have the majority of leaders inside organizations. So we need to continue hearing those stories.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And the immutable that I've seen in those, because there were others that followed that, is that those that kept their head in the sand were out of work and displaced. Those that embraced it saw it as an opportunity and took their skills and their crafts to a level they didn't even comprehend. There was so much great work and great creative that came out of the generation of the Macintosh, right? And then there has been so much development in from the web and the disruption that the web caused, and then the disruption that we talked about earlier about digital marketing and data-centric marketing and personalization, and all those things have provided opportunity, whether it's the solo entrepreneur or all that. So there's tremendous opportunity in that. But I remember you asked, like, what do I do in my downtime? And I wanted this backstory of why I saw it early on. And when I noticed it, I could watch a couple hours on a Saturday of YouTube video or scan some websites and keep up. And then pace went up. And then it turned to about me getting up every morning around 4:30 or 5 and watching an hour or two of YouTube videos. And then it was so great and increased so much that I had to then create this knowledge funnel system just to stay up. So all that's a backstory to say I'm very cognizant of self-care, and I have to have something that's completely out of this. My wife and I love music, and we talked about that. So we do these music adventures, and we try to go to one or two a month and some venue that's a drive away and maybe spend the night and see some different. So we shop. There's bands we like, and then there's just venues we like. So we do that. I like to play music. I'm a really good guitarist and songwriter when it's just me and nobody's around. But I pretty much suck as soon as somebody walks in the room. So I like doing that for me. I think that was something I learned early on, because I used to, if you're paid to be creative, you've got to have a creative outlet that's non-transactional to help the transactional one. So I'm a big believer in that. And then just I believe in personal pillars of development. So my wife doesn't understand it, but I've always read 4 books at a time, and they're in categories. So I read, like right now, I'm reading a book about, you do the same thing.
Yep.
So I'm reading a book about AI. I'm reading a book about spiritual growth. I'm reading a book, a piece of fiction, and I'm reading a book that's just a business book, and I think that holistic development is the key to health. So big guy on healthcare and all that. I've been on my own health journey. I'm an extremist, so I'm a couple hours away from getting a certification in functional nutrition.
Oh, wow.
So I've been on my own health journey with that, and yeah, so
That's great. So you're one of the other few people that reads multiple books at the same time, like I do. I've explained it to my wife because it drives her crazy, because she very much is, you pick one book, you start it from start to finish.
My wife,
and then you start
exactly.
on the
Yeah,
next
she
one.
thinks I'm insane.
Here's what I figured out why I do it. I'm curious if this is the same reason for you. When I'm trying to build my schema for a concept, I want to think about it from different angles. And so to your point, I may want to read a book that has to do with kind of like this topic from this angle from a psychologist. Maybe I'm going to grab one from a medical doctor, maybe from like a thought leader or person that does some kind of an application in business. But it's to really try and flush out the schema at a high level and think about it from different angles, different perspectives and experiences from other people. And I feel like some books are really good about trying to bring that in different perspectives within the book itself. But I just found for myself, I get a much deeper understanding of certain types of topics if simultaneously I'm engaging in different types of literature that is kind of tangential to one another to really flush that schema out at a much higher level.
Yeah, I think they call that lateral creativity, right? I think there's linear problem solving, but then there's that it's that mechanism of thinking outside the box. So I do think there's some benefit of that those multiple pillars or knowledge channels, if you will. And then the other thing is just it's nothing more than a hypothesis on my part. I'm certainly not a neuroscientist, but I do know enough to know that recent research has shown that our brains are not nearly as hardwired as they thought, that they're completely malleable. And I recognize, just being a voracious reader as long as I can remember, that there was this phenomena that would go on where, you read a book and you kind of start thinking in the cadence or the syntax of the book. You kind of as that character, or there's some residual thing and impact in my brain. And so I feel by reading through these different categories that I'm actually intentionally molding my brain. And I think there's a real responsibility in that. So it's a behavior that you won't wrestle from my hands anytime soon.
Well, you helped rewire my brain today. I just learned about lateral creativity. I never heard about that before. So there's an actual term for the craziness of what I do with books. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know if, yeah, I think that is it. We're going to decide it is.
I love it. I want to thank you again. So I said, thanks for sharing the stories. We need to hear more of those. But I also want to say thank you for coming on too, because there's a lot of theory futurists out there, and it's very good stuff. But you are a perfect blend of talking about the theory and then getting down into the real world application like the right now. Because of your role of being a chief AI implementation officer at HardingPorman. And this conversation is going to help so many leaders to move from the theory of the things they're hearing out there to what are the things that we can do today. And you gave so many good recommendations, getting into the details of how you're using it, how you're supporting your teams and departments, of spinning up GPTs. Thank you. Thank you, Vince, for even at 64 saying, I love this. I want to learn this. I want to share it with my teammates, right? The age is just a number, and that you're continuing to push the boundaries with this and then sharing it with our audience today. So we know folks can reach on LinkedIn, and they need to go out, find Vince Freeman on LinkedIn and connect with him and follow him. Great content from Vince, even aside from this podcast, just the stuff that he puts out on LinkedIn, his newsletter. Y'all got to follow it. But then you've also got this other cohort that you mentioned earlier, Vince, Tell us about that and how people can learn more about it.
Great. It's easy to remember. The URL is survivingtheuprising.com. It has basically just some limited functions right now. You can join my cohort, sign up. So when you join that, you'll get a weekly newsletter that I put out. And I'm really proud of the newsletter. I think it's a great format. I'll give you just the overview of 4 developing stories and news items for that week. And I'll just give you the bullet points and tell you why it matters to you. And then we usually cover like a tool of the week, something to try generative AI with and do it. We have a AI or survivalist tip of the week, how you might practically pull it in. And I have a kind of an existential pondering, something to think about. But I also have a course, I think I mentioned, that's Knowledge Funnel course, which I think is a great, it just, again, I'm not trying to sell it. I just think it's how I've used it. I think it's a great tool. And in the process of then using the tool, you learn all these different things about AI. And so it's not just a course, but I think it's something that can give you value right away. So I've got a couple test students in it right now. I'm going to open it up to the public here Friday. And so you can sign up for that. And yeah. I think that's it. I love talking about AI. So yeah, I don't mind people reaching out to me. I used to, when I was doing the Mac desktop publishing consultant thing, I used to tell my cohort way back then is to find that person that knows more about you and ask them questions as much as you can until they say, stop asking me questions. Right. So I guess I'm throwing that out there.
In the newsletter, people can connect with the newsletter if they connect with you on LinkedIn, right? Like it's a newsletter you primarily do through LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. So connect with Vince Freeman on LinkedIn to continue following his great content. And then also survivingtheuprising.com, the cohort that's going to be launching soon for supporting leaders around AI and learning about it together. And again, Vince, kudos to you. You do such a great job of taking things from theory and boiling it down to practical application. And so just 2 great resources there, your newsletter and survivingtheuprising.com, the cohort to help leaders on that journey. Thanks for spending a few hours with us and helping our learners grow today.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And wait, I do want to give a plug to and thank HardingPorman. So if you do, that is my day job. We do these live AI catch-ups. So if you're one of those people like, oh my God, I need this whole thing, just reach out to HardingPorman and we'll schedule one of those for you.
You got it. Vince, we're going to do it again sometime, brother.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Hey, we never talked about music too, so we got to get back and just for that reason alone, right?
Oh, absolutely. We've always got to do that because concert season's about to start here soon.
Amen.
There we go. That'll be the next episode.
I love it. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to Working Forward. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Until next time, here's to building tomorrow today.